The following program discusses sensitive issues relating to abuse and addictive behavior. Parents are cautioned that some material may be too candid for younger children.
Hi everyone and welcome to Recovery Road. My name's Graham Hood from Mission Serenity and we'd like to welcome you to Lesson 4, which is, or Step 4, Moral Inventory and Sponsor.
That's it.
And let's get into introducing our guest. We have my wife Michelle, who's joining us today as usual. Hi Michelle.
Hi everyone.
And our cheeky Danni Synot, who's our special guest in the series. It's great to have you aboard, Danni, and thanks for keeping it light.
The cheeky Danni Synot. I've never been cheeky in my life, Graham.
Butter wouldn't melt in her mouth.
I'm still in
would it?
denial.
Exactly.
Clearly.
Exactly. Let's get into the steps and the principles. Michelle, if you'd like to give us Step 4, thanks.
Okay. This is where we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the text today is from Lamentations 3:40. Let us examine our ways and test them, and let us return to the Lord. And Danni, if you'd like to give us the principle, that would be great.
Amen. Principle today is openly examine and confess my faults to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. And a beautiful beatitude again is Matthew 5:8. Happy are the pure in heart.
Wow.
I love that.
Pure in heart means sincere, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Honest.
Yep. And how much do we love the Beatitudes?
Oh, it's awesome.
That's our recipe to how to be a good person.
I've heard it described as the greatest sermon ever given, and it really was. It was the recipe, that's right.
There's so much hope in it. That's what I love.
There is. And there's no judgment in it either, you know, and even the way it was delivered, you know. I love the Beatitudes. In fact, we've got a dog at home we call Matthew.
Yeah, after the Beatitudes.
After the Beatitudes, because we love the Beatitudes and we also love Matthew, but that's another story. We should have brought him in. He's a very healing influence in our life. Moral inventory and sponsor is a very critical part in recovery. This is where the people say that the rubber meets the road. Some people struggle with this step, but don't be perturbed by it. If you are struggling to get through this particular step, you can come back to it. But believe me, you're better off just being honest and dealing with it. We've often talked about waiting to have a tooth pulled in the dentist. It's just get it over and done with and get on with your journey. This is far too important for you to lose any impetus in it over this step. But moral inventory is about being real and telling the truth.
Being honest. Moral means honest.
Moral means honest. And we're being honest about ourselves. And isn't that hard? How hard is it to be honest about yourself?
But we have to be, otherwise we're not going to heal.
Exactly.
We're going to be stuck.
The pink elephant in the room that everyone looks around.
Yeah.
That's it.
Danni, you've been through a moral inventory. You've been on recovery for a while. How hard was that for you?
I think some things were easier than others. I think the hardest one for me was, you know, dealing with the fact that I was perpetrating the same damage against my kids as what my mum had, because I had so much pain from my experience, and to realise in a split second when someone brought that to my attention, it was like my whole life just flashed before me, and to actually have to look at that and take responsibility and to realise that I was causing my kids that pain. I mean, as a mum and as a person, it's huge. But I tell you what, it was a really good motivator to want to do something about it. And so, you know, I think there's things that are easy and things that are tough, but so essential to recovery. If you get this, you will heal.
What I love about the open share groups, or our small share groups in recovery, is that we get a sense of permission to talk about our stuff. And what was really great, when we've all been chatting about the program before we've gone to air, there was a revelation between you two that you, Michelle, had been through issues in your life that were similar to what Danni's mum had gone through. And Danni was able to ask you how that impacted on you and then relate it to how your mum impacted on your life. And we call that mutual benefit in recovery, because when we tell our story, everybody has permission to listen for a start, because the small group guidelines keep us focused on what's being shared.
And we identify with something that the other person talks about.
Exactly, we can relate. And then all of a sudden the picture becomes clearer and all the pieces in the puzzle seem to drop into place.
And we feel not so alone then, because it's like, wow, it's happened to other people too.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the other thing is too, that's the other benefit of having, you know, a sponsor or someone that you can relate to in your recovery, is that if they're a bit further down the track than you, they can kind of, you know, guide you through a bit and give you some ideas of things that might help.
Yeah, exactly. And we encourage people to have relationships, recovery relationships outside the group, you know, where they talk. And a lot of people continue the journey in small groups outside the Recovery Road group because they're so empowered to do that and help one another. You will have realised already, if you've gone through our books, that we work on a series of acrostics. And the first in this particular series is to make time. It's really important to make time to go through this inventory because you actually need to find a quiet place, sit down, work this through in your mind.
Be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself and put things down on paper, because that's the harsh reality. Just flitting by in your mind, oh, I've done that, is not enough. To see it down in paper is amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think too, another trick with it is, you know, sometimes you go to put something down and something will come to mind and you go, oh, but that's not really, you know, that big an issue. Put it down, because the fact that it's come into your mind, for whatever reason, it holds significance.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
That's very true. So making time is important, and I think it's also important. I mean, when I did mine, I needed tissues.
And loads of paper probably, like most of us.
Exactly, and make a huge list. And remember that tears wash away the pain. There's nothing wrong with crying. You know, Michelle often describes the recovery process as peeling an onion. One layer at a time and you cry and the tears wash away the acid out of your eyes.
You feel better afterwards because your body's flooded with endorphins. So
You do.
God's even put that comforting thing
You do.
in there.
But you know what? With this moral inventory, we don't just put down all the bad things we've done. We put down the good things we've done too, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can
We have to be
balance it.
fair. We have to balance. So we have to say,
Absolutely.
hey, we're not all totally bad. We've got to be able to look at something good about ourselves.
Yeah, we don't want you to end up feeling worse about after recovery than you did when you started. I mean, it's not about you bashing yourself up or nailing yourself to a tree. That's already been done for you. Jesus has gone through that for us. He wants us to be open and honest and be real about our stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He wants you to look at it honestly and fairly and say, hey, you're not all bad. You're good too.
Yeah.
You've done these things that are okay.
Well, that's what he did to me when he took me through my past. He said, look, no wonder you behaved the way you did. Look at the circumstances you were living in. Now, that's the reason you behaved that way. That's not an excuse for you to continue in that behaviour.
That's right.
Yeah.
So now can you see that you really were a good person all along? You just fell into a hole.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just
And-
because I was abused didn't give me an excuse to behave badly.
Exactly.
Okay, yes, I was abused, but I had to be responsible for my bad actions.
That's right.
Yeah.
Rely on Jesus.
Absolutely. That's the key. And I think, you know, what doing the moral inventory does too, it really, you know, it gives you that balance. It gives you understanding. It paves the road for you to take responsibility, but it also enables you to be able to separate who you are from your behaviour.
Yeah.
For example, you know, shame, excuse me, shame says you are bad. Guilt says, you know, what you're doing is not right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really important because, you know, shame is just so devastating to our recovery if we don't deal with it.
Michelle, how empty do you reckon our prisons would be if the judiciary had actually asked the question, what caused you to behave this way?
Oh, considerably empty. If they had an ear to listen to the pain of people and to work out why they did behave like that, absolutely.
So you've always done this in your practice as a psychologist. You always look beyond people's pain to see
You have to.
beyond their behaviour rather to see where the pain
Yeah,
comes from.
because the behaviour is just I don't know.
It's just an indicator, isn't it? It's like a
It's a
barometer.
symptom.
Yeah, and you actually served time in prison
I did.
for a driving offence.
Yeah, and I was deemed to be, because of my public position, I had to be made an example of because of my contempt for the law. And I did have contempt for the law because they weren't giving the summons to my perpetrator to appear in court.
So there was
I
no
was
justice.
angry, and then they took it out on me and sent me to prison.
Do you think it goes deeper than that though too, Shella, where like not only someone asking you about, you know, why you're doing this, but someone actually taking the time to hear your pain and to
Exactly, that's the
see
difference.
Shella as a person.
That's the difference in trying to understand me, trying to understand where I came from. Yeah.
Isn't that the beautiful thing about a recovery group?
Mm-hmm.
It
You
is.
get the freedom and the safety to do that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when I give my testimony publicly about my porn addiction, I get so much contact from people who tell me, thank God you're talking about this stuff, because I'm struggling with the same thing and I don't know where to go with it.
Yeah.
And back in the day when I fell into it, there was no one to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, recovery groups were there for alcoholics and drug addicts, but not for people struggling with the issues that I had.
Well, that's the wonderful thing about recovery, because God has a purpose for you. He never wastes the hurt. And his purpose for you is to help other people overcome, or help other people overcome the issues that they're dealing with. So where I was used to be fearful of talking about being sexually abused, it doesn't bother me now, because people come forward and say, hey, you're telling my story. So I feel better that I can help other people recover.
And Michelle, how many people come up to you and say that? It's frightening, isn't it?
It's endless.
There are so many people coming up and saying, you're telling my story. I mean, even people in churches. That we mainly speak at churches, and we see this happen so often. And you would have, Danny, because of your ministry.
Oh, exactly right. You know, with Brave Enough and you know, even when I've gone out for Beyond or in Focus or whatever, you know, it's funny actually sitting here doing a program with you guys on Recovery Road, because my own journey was me sitting in my lounge room broken and just, you know, picking out power poles on the side of the road that I could just run into. You know, I turned on the telly one night on 3ABN and this new show came on, and here's Cherie Peters telling her testimony. And I literally looked up to the sky and said, thank God, finally someone else in the church that's normal. And of course there are lots of normal people, but I finally could relate to someone who was being real and saying it how it is.
How many people have started their recovery journey through Cherie Peters?
Oh, absolutely right. And each of you guys and me, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is
Celebrate
the power
recovery.
of testimony. This is the power of sharing that journey and what God can do for our lives, because this is the living proof. It doesn't get any more real.
Now, rely on Jesus is really important, because although you need to be alone and sit somewhere quiet and make time to do that, know that with Jesus you're never alone, and he's always there to comfort you. And if there's a still small voice speaking in your ear talking about something that you need to recollect, like you mentioned earlier, that's Jesus saying, come on, this is something else you need to fix up. He's there with you. He's not standing behind you with a whip. He's got his arms around you, and he's really pleased that you're on this journey.
That's it. And he's not there, you know, just playing with the flowers. He wants to take each of those weeds and rip them up by the roots. He doesn't want us to just chop it off and you know, deal with it for a little while. He wants to just clear out the whole patch of weeds and plant beautiful flowers in your life.
Amen to that. Now, analyse. We have to be really honest in analysing not only the behaviours that we had, what caused them. And I always talk about, this is a really important thing. A lot of people say that you should forget the past, but there's, you know, a quote in history that says people who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And the other thing is that we've coined a phrase in Mission Serenity that the past is a warehouse where you store wisdom. You should only go back there for wisdom and take that wisdom with you to make better decisions in your future. It's not a place to go back and beat people over the head with, to get weapons from, as most people use the past to do. So we need to be really honest in analysing our part in what happened in our lives that caused our pain, the part of others. Is there anyone we need to forgive? All this stuff comes to the surface, Michelle, doesn't it, when we do that?
It certainly does.
And also not just people who we need to forgive, but people wwho we need to ask forgiveness from.
Oh, absolutely. That's why we have to be honest. We have to be honest in this moral inventory, and to make that clear,
as plain as we can. You know, I can imagine a whole raft of people that I've heard in my life, but there's a whole lot of people I've heard inadvertently that I would not know about, and we can't make amends to them all individually, but we can through Jesus. And we can come to that later on in another part of the series.
And let's not neglect when we do our moral inventories either on the, what would you call them, acceptable issues. Like, you know, how many times do we see workaholics, you know, important business people or pastors or whatever, throwing everything into their work, and everyone pats them on the back and says, oh, they're such a hard worker, look what they're doing for God.
I'm glad you brought that up.
And the reality is, you know, and I've been one of them, neglecting our families.
Yep, they're just compensating for something that's not quite right.
Put it down on, on your inventory.
Now, we're going to talk about lists shortly, but some people will be wanting some of these resources, and you may want some more information about Mission Serenity and what we're offering you. We're going to take a short break now, and we'll be back in a moment. You'll get all the information you need here on the screen. Thanks for watching.
Mission Serenity is passionate about restoring broken lives. They've helped countless people find recovery from all sorts of bondage, including addiction, abuse, and other issues to enter a new life of freedom. Now it's your turn. Grab your copy of the Recovery Road Resource Pack and learn essential recovery principles such as turning your life over to God, setting boundaries, and accepting accountability. Structured around the 12 steps in the Beatitudes of Jesus, Recovery Road is a Bible-based resource designed to lead you to the source of all healing, Jesus. Explore it for your own journey or start a group in your local community. Order online today for just $30 plus postage and handling at missionserenity.org.au.
It's really good. So welcome back, and here we are back in our step 4 of Recovery Road. To finish off the moral inventory, in our acrostic we have the word list. It's really important when we write our list, which is what we're doing in this step, to make sure we focus equally on the good and the bad. Everything needs to balance out. It's just like the universe. There's a battle between good and evil in the universe, and there's a battle between good and evil in our souls. And we need to balance it out. How difficult was that for you, Michelle?
Oh, it was really hard for me, because I had to face the reality of how I damaged my kids.
Yep.
And what behaviours that I'd put in place, they were for me, they were safeguarding me, but wreaking havoc on my kids.
Yeah.
So to write that all down and see it harshly on paper was devastating.
And then a realisation that any damage imparted to them causes them damage which they impart to their children.
Absolutely, generations it can go on for.
We have to break the chain, don't we?
We do. It starts with us.
What happened in your list, Danni? Did you find it, for me it was like, it was easy to go to me and all my issues and problems, and whenever I was paid a compliment or thought of something that might have made me feel good, I dismissed it, because deep down I thought I don't deserve that. Have you had that experience in your list?
Oh yeah, not being enough.
Yeah.
You know, was always a big one for me. I think I was so extremely self-focused in my pain that initially my list was all about what had happened to me, who'd hurt me. And then when I started to honestly look at my stuff and take responsibility for the parts that I'd played in that and my own dysfunctions and behaviours, I realised how much work I had to do.
Yeah.
And one thing that was really, I guess, a pivotal thing was realising that recovery is a sanctifying process. You know, it's a process where we're being polished up and moulded and made new. And that doesn't happen overnight. And so just taking that pressure off to go, you know what, God's going to deal with each of these things as he needs to.
Yep.
You know, we don't have to feel like, okay, we know what our stuff is, so let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I'm probably like Shell. The hardest stuff definitely for me was dealing with my kids, and probably even my husband, to realise that, you know, my need to not feel controlled has sometimes led to me, I guess, abusing him, really.
That's what we've done. We've abused them.
Yes, I've done that too, so many times, you know, and all I can do now is hope that my recovery will show my kids that there is another way, and they don't have to stay trapped in the things that I've inflicted upon them. You know, we talk about finding a time alone to do this, but this journey isn't about being alone. The recovery journey relies on you having accountability partnerships and sponsors in your journey to go forward.
Yes.
So we want to talk about sponsorship in this step, and accountability partnerships. We're not meant to do this alone, and the beauty of recovery is you're forming friendships with authentic people who are sharing their stuff with you. And they're sharing it with you because they trust you and they know that you trust them. Because You know, once you know everything about everybody else, what's the point in going out and gossiping about it?
Yeah.
You know, like, and you wouldn't do that. Why would you gossip about somebody when you know that the other people have got the goods on you, so to speak? So accountability and responsibility in the group is paramount, especially when it comes to confidentiality.
You know it's biblical.
Go ahead.
Ecclesiastes 4:9 says two are better off than one. You know.
Yeah, to share.
Yeah.
To share.
Confess your sins to one another.
Yeah.
All of that.
Now, the best description I've heard about the difference between an accountability partner and a sponsor, if you imagine a sponsor as the coach of the team, he's somebody who's been through the ropes, played 300 games, and is now, you know, too battle weary to go out onto the field, but he's coaching. He's been through it, and it's the same in recovery. Sponsors are people who have completed their 12-step program, who are then able to mentor.
Yeah,
Mentor is a good word.
Mentor and guide.
Mentor and guide people through the process. A sponsor is someone you can go to who can actually give you advice, but a really good sponsor is going to give you advice by asking you questions and help you to solve the issue for yourself and involve you in lots of prayer, because prayer is pivotal in recovery. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Accountability partner is like one of your team players on the field.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, a good accountability partner, when you invite one, is somebody that you feel you can trust because you've heard them share. You've had a little bit of time in fellowship with them. They're going to call you and make sure that you're okay. You'll share with them that perhaps in this occasion you're doing your list, you're doing your moral inventory, and they're going to check with you and see how that's going and keep you honest.
They're also going to be the person who checks on you if you didn't turn up for recovery.
Yeah, if you don't turn up to your
How are
group
you going? What's happening for you?
Yeah. And my accountability partner, and you can have more than one, can't you?
You can.
My accountability partners are the guys that I ring when I'm feeling that awful twinge of, temptation when Satan's got his hooks in. And when does that happen? Always when you're feeling a bit down, when you're feeling a bit anxious, when you're feeling a bit distressed about something, when you just want to take your mind away from the things that drag you down, you turn to your addiction.
Yeah, the hooks that Satan has into the individual, as varied as they are always going to be more intense at points of crisis in your life.
Yeah.
And what are those addictions? We're talking about the big stuff, but what about gossip? What about pride?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an addiction, something.
Perfection.
Perfection. Isn't it easy to feel good about your wretched life when you're talking and telling stories about other people's lives?
Criticism.
Impatience.
Yep.
I think it's really important too, talking about safe people, and toxic people, and, that's really important in finding an appropriate accountability partner or sponsor.
Yeah.
That, really watch out for people who sort of act like they've been there, done that, got it all together, and they don't ever speak about their own weaknesses.
That's why accountability partners are best in your small group. You have to have an accountability partner in your group, because you're aware of the issues they're going through, they're aware of the issues you're going through. Yeah. They're more authentic, they're more open and honest about things, because they're really doing it.
Yeah. Hey, isn't it like the teams on the Tour de France? I mean, I'm not into cycling, but the way those guys always share the lead in the team, and there's always somebody ready to grab hold of the bike of the other guy and throw him forward, and it's like that with accountability partnerships. And it's like having someone at the top of the hole with a rope. I mean, Jesus is up there holding the rope, and your accountability partner's yelling down at you saying, hey, there's a rope in front of you.
Grab it.
Grab it and climb out.
I'll help you.
And the beauty of this relationship is he's relying on me for when he's in the hole to drag him out.
Yeah. Because any relationship that's unbalanced, it's not good. And so it's such a blessing, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be able to have a sponsor and an accountability
partner. And the accountability partner and the sponsor help you from falling back, help you from relapsing.
And you've already learned in your journey, we're a reasonable way through it, the importance of actually being able to listen. Because in the share groups, we know that there are 5 basic guidelines to sharing. And those guidelines actually teach us to listen. It's about not interrupting, about giving someone 3 to 5 minutes, and about not judging them. So we haven't got an internal dialogue going on, how could he have done that, or how could she have said that? This is about actually just hearing them and really hearing them, so much so that you could actually say back to them what they just said. Although we're not meant to, but you listen with intent. because most people struggle with the fact that no one ever listens to them and
That's
they never
true,
get better. What's the point of being honest? What's the point of stepping out of denial? Who's listening?
I know.
Healing that happens just from being heard.
I know that's what was pivotal in my healing was being heard and listened and not judged or commented on, just loved. Just accepted
loved,
and loved, you know. I was still all right as a human being.
Do you love someone enough to listen to them? To really listen to them? To really hear their pain? Without judging them, without condemning them? Without wanting to run off and grab a sword? You know, we talk about...
Without ramming solutions down their throat either.
Yeah, Mr. Fix
Trying
It.
to fix it.
Mr. Fix It. You know, we wrote an article recently about fight or flight, about the adrenaline function in the body. There's another step in there, it's called stand. And sometimes we need not to run or to fight, we just need to stand. And who better to stand with than the Lord Jesus Christ?
He helps us to do that.
Oh, man. You know, we have the Creator of the universe who's walking this step with us, walking this journey with us down the road to recovery. How good is that, Danny?
Exactly. And, you know, the beautiful thing about it is that, you know, we've talked about before that powerlessness and releasing stuff to God. He's actually the one that stands us up and holds us firm.
Yeah.
Because we're always under his wings.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the recovery journey is there's no judgment. When you walk through the doorway to recovery, whether it be this program, Celebrate Recovery, Celebrating Life in Recovery, hey, we don't care. There's 8 billion people who are broken on the planet. We want everyone to heal, don't we? Yeah. So it's really important that we understand when you walk through the doorway of a recovery program in a church, in a community centre, in a family group, whatever you're doing, you're in a non-judgmental place. And your accountability partner and your sponsor are going to support you in that journey, aren't they?
That's right. And there's nothing worse than, you know, people even grading sin or grading our stuff.
Shouldn't
dirt's
be.
dirt.
Dirt's dirt.
Dirt's dirt.
Exactly.
And God hates the sin, but he loves the sinner.
Absolutely.
You know, one sin of pride is just as damaging as a sin of pornography.
Yeah.
Just the same.
And it all intertwines. You know, very rarely do we have one issue.
Yeah, and you know, the whole Recovery Road program is about creating a safe place in churches and community groups. And so, when we talk about safety, we talk about safety from other people's judgments and condemnation and their assessments of it that make us feel less than perfect. So the Recovery Road journey, any recovery journey, is a good way to create an environment within an environment where it's safe to go.
Yes, we all should be doing that.
We all should be doing that. And Mission Serenity is about creating a network of healing churches and organisations of all denominations and all walks of life where this can take place. And once again, we could talk for hours about this stuff.
We could.
That time again.
We're running out of time.
Yeah.
Well, we get to do it again for the next episode.
We do.
Don't despair. You know, as always, we want to leave you with a part of the Serenity Prayer. May God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change.
The courage to change the things we can.
And the wisdom to know the difference.
And by now, some of you will be getting a really good handle on that. And we ask you all to have a good read of the Serenity Prayer, to break it down into its sections and really hear what God is saying to us through that prayer. But until then, in the meantime, we'll see you on Recovery Road when next we meet, and thanks for watching. Good luck with your steps. Bye for now.
God bless.